The story begins with Ryu and his little brother Kotaro arriving at Morinomiya Academy. Ryu looks at a map of the academy buildings while Kotaro stands beside him. Ryu observes the campus, noting how huge it is. When Kotaro stops walking, Ryu bends down and asks if he's tired. Kotaro merely nods, and Ryu picks him up, assuring him that the chairwoman must be really nice since she agreed to take in two strangers. As they walk towards the building, Ryu recalls their parents, who were free spirits and rarely came home. One day they got into a plane crash and never returned. Shortly after, a man named Saikawa met with them on behalf of his employer, the chairwoman of Morinomiya Academy. She had lost her son and daughter-in-law in the same crash and offered to become their legal guardian. At the chairwoman's office, Ryu composes himself, preparing to introduce himself and offer his condolences. When they enter, the chairwoman impatiently says she's been waiting for ages. Kotaro points to her hair and calls it fluffy, causing Ryu to quickly cover his brother's mouth and apologize. Ryu introduces himself and Kotaro, but the chairwoman cuts him off, stating she did not call them out of sympathy. After confirming Ryu can take care of toddlers, she instructs Saikawa to take them to the daycare center. She declares that in exchange for looking after their needs, Ryu will be the school's babysitter. Saikawa leads them to the daycare center, and Ryu wonders if the chairwoman does not want them. Saikawa jokes by offering a piggyback ride, surprising Ryu. On their way, Ryu asks if the chairwoman has grandchildren. Saikawa explains that she no longer has any family. Ryu realizes that the chairwoman wants him to start a babysitting club that her son and daughter-in-law failed to establish due to lack of student interest. Saikawa apologizes for the burden, but Ryu resolves to do his best and asks Saikawa to thank the chairwoman for the opportunity. Kotaro wakes up as they enter the daycare center. Ryu introduces himself to the children, who stare at him silently. The children run to a sleeping pink-haired man, Usaida, who wakes up and protests in pain. Ryu apologizes and introduces himself as the new babysitter. Usaida, holding a baby, calls them Ryunosuke and Torakichi, which Ryu quickly corrects. Usaida introduces himself as a graduate of the school and the only staff member, calling Ryu a lifesaver since he cannot watch the children while caring for the baby. The children excitedly introduce themselves through a song. Taka waves a toy sword at Kotaro, calling him a monster. Ryu nervously volunteers to be the monster, and the children eagerly attack him. Kotaro tries to save his brother but is repeatedly pushed back. Ryu assures Kotaro he is fine and encourages him to play elsewhere. Kotaro sits near the bookshelves and pulls out a book about Panda-chan. Usaida kneels beside him, asking if he wants his brother back or wants the book read to him, but Kotaro shakes his head both times. Usaida pats Kotaro's head, telling him Ryu will not notice unless he calls for him. Usaida calls Ryu over, informing him that his shift is over and that the chairwoman is stingy with overtime pay. He hands Midori to Ryu, stating that the mothers should arrive soon. Ryu insists he can handle it. As Usaida leaves, he comments that the brothers are quite similar. Taka pulls Ryu's hair and ears while Kirin asks if he wants to eat. She plays the mother role with toy food and Midori as the baby. Ryu warns her about dragging Midori, and chaos ensues when Kazuma chases Takuma through Kirin's setup. Ryu quickly picks up Kazuma before he can cry, and Takuma comforts him. Kirin, disappointed with her ruined setup, eagerly agrees to redo it at Ryu's request. Midori starts crying, and Ryu, struggling with Taka's antics, realizes how much energy children have. The mothers arrive, and the children run to them. Kirin's mother asks about Ryu, and he introduces himself as the new babysitting club member. The mothers introduce themselves: Yukari Sawatari, Midori's mother, Umi Mamizuka, Takuma and Kazuma's mother, and Yayoi Kumatsuka, Kirin's mother. They are pleased to see a new friend for their children and thank Ryu for his hard work before leaving. Ryu, exhausted, leans against the wall, noting how late the teachers work. Suddenly, a tall boy with an intimidating glare, Hayato Kamitani, bursts in, calling for Taka. Ryu introduces himself, and Hayato, also a third-year junior high student, makes a proper greeting. Ryu thinks Hayato seems nice despite his appearance. Hayato apologizes for being late due to his club and parents' grading work. Taka refuses to leave, and Hayato sternly insists, hitting Taka on the head when he resists. Ryu nervously tells Hayato not to hit Taka, but Hayato says words are not enough. Hayato suggests Ryu look after his own brother and excuses himself. Ryu thanks him. Ryu sits next to Kotaro, apologizing for not spending much time with him. Kotaro falls onto Ryu's lap, and Ryu notices he has a fever. Panicking, Ryu asks Hayato for help, and they rush Kotaro to the hospital. Reflecting on his negligence, Ryu vows to be more attentive. The doctor explains that Kotaro's fever is from stress and will pass with rest. Alone, Ryu tries to call his parents, but remembers they are gone. Crying, he realizes he is the only one who can protect Kotaro. The chairwoman comforts him, reminding him that they are not alone and encouraging him to see his brother. Ryu finds Kotaro crying for him and hugs him, also starting to cry. He realizes they must face their parents' absence together. That night, the chairwoman tucks them in, and Ryu feels warmth and comfort. The next day, the chairwoman finds shabby flowers on her desk, which Saikawa says were picked by Ryu and Kotaro. She initially grumbles but keeps the flowers, showing a softer side. In class, Ryu confidently introduces himself, encouraged by Hayato's presence. At the daycare, he tells Usaida about Kotaro's fever, and Hayato expresses relief at Kotaro's recovery. The children invite Kotaro to read a book with them, and Ryu reads a story to the group while Usaida naps with Midori. Ryu wakes up with Kotaro lying on his chest. He sits up groggily, hugging Kotaro. Suddenly, the chairwoman slams open the door, demanding they get up. Ryu replies it's just past 5, but she hates wasted time. She orders them to eat, pack lunches, and get to school. Saikawa, in an apron, says he prepared their meals. The chairwoman reminds Ryu he'll spend breaks at the daycare. Kotaro grabs her hair, calling it shaggy. She scolds him and threatens to give him the same hairstyle. Ryu apologizes as Saikawa imagines Kotaro with fluffy hair. The chairwoman gives Ryu a Morinomiya Academy uniform. Though he has only a few months left, she insists on the Academy's uniform. Ryu thanks her, and she exits. He zips up the navy blue uniform and tears up, realizing it fits perfectly. This will be their new home. He smiles at Kotaro as they prepare for the day. At the daycare, Kotaro takes off his shoes as Usaida compliments Ryu's new uniform. Surprised the chairwoman bought it for just a few months' use. Ryu denies she's stingy, checks the time, and decides to go to class. He tells Kotaro he'll be back for lunch and to wake Usaida if needed. Kotaro just stares at him until he leaves. Walking through the hallway, Ryu feels embarrassed as students giggle at him. Hayato greets him and Ryu asks if something is wrong, mentioning it's his first day in the new uniform. Hayato points out that Ryu brought the children along. Ryu turns to see Kotaro and the other kids. Taka explains Kotaro wanted to follow him. Kotaro hugs Ryu as the children ask to play. Ryu tries to quiet them. Hayato tells Taka to shut up, then raises his fist, scaring the children. Ryu begs him not to threaten them, but Taka runs away in tears. Taka bumps into a female student and Ryu apologizes. She sternly replies that sorry isn't enough, demanding to know why children are at the school and scolding them. The children cry in fear and cling to Ryu. He apologizes again and agrees to take them back to the daycare center, recruiting Hayato's help. The students whisper that the girl is Inomata from the advanced class. One notes she's top of their grade, but mean. Another mentions Ryu is taking care of the children because he lost his parents and calls Inomata cruel. Inomata, overhearing, walks away and sees Shizuka, Hayato, and Taka's mother carrying books. Shizuka asks if children were crying, and Inomata confirms. Carrying books, Inomata says not everyone has time to fool around like Ryu. Shizuka notes Inomata, as the top student, must have a lot on her shoulders. Inomata denies it, saying studying hard is every student's duty. Shizuka then asks Inomata for a favor. Ryu tells the children to calm down now that they are at the daycare. Ryu and Hayato find Usaida and Midori sleeping, so Hayato wakes Usaida. Ryu assures a shameful Kotaro there's nothing to be sad about. Ryu tells Kotaro it's his fault for not noticing the children. Inomata suddenly comments he should be more aware. The children tremble as Ryu asks why she's there. Inomata explains Taka forgot his lunch, so Shizuka asked her to deliver it. Ryu takes the bento box. Usaida then cries out in pain, claiming a severe stomachache, and asks Hayato to take him to the nurse's office, leaving Ryu and Inomata in charge. Ryu and Inomata are dumbfounded as Usaida and Hayato walk away. Ryu holds Midori and tells Inomata he can manage alone so she can return to class. She introduces herself as Inomata from Class A and insists on staying to fulfill Usaida's responsibility. Ryu, feeling awkward, introduces himself as Kashima from Class C. Inomata offers to hold the sleeping Midori, but before Ryu can respond, she blushes and loudly claims she wants to help, not just hold the baby. Her voice wakes Midori, who starts crying. Ryu tells her to hush, but it's too late. As Ryu consoles Midori, Inomata asks what her crying means. Taka pokes Inomata with his sword, causing her to turn around. The children ball their fists, deciding to defeat the villain. Inomata glares at them, causing the children to flee in fear and hide under a table, tearing up. Inomata begins to tear up too. Ryu instructs the children to apologize as they are at fault. Inomata refuses forced apologies, thinking Ryu is burdened by disobedient children and lacks free time. Ryu smiles, refuting her, saying being with his brother and the children is really fun. Ryu blushes as he smiles, but is stunned when a panda pillow hits him. Inomata turns red, telling him not to smile triumphantly and admitting he's not pitiful. She throws stuffed toys, crying that everyone likes him and not her. Frustrated, she says everyone hates her and studying is all she's good at. She drops a bunny plush, tearfully admitting studying is all she has. Inomata cries, thinking the more she studies, the lonelier she becomes. As Inomata wipes her tears, she sees Kirin placing her hands on her lap. The children with red cheeks surround her, about to cry. Kirin consoles Inomata, telling her not to cry. The children apologize, and Inomata asks why they're crying too. She hugs them, and they all cry together. Ryu wonders why Inomata started crying, but knows that reassurance and warmth often bring more tears. At the nurse's office, Shizuka notes that many gifted students don't know how to take breaks. She glares at Usaida, who lounges on a bed, pointing out some people take too many. Hayato tells Ryu that Usaida was faking a stomachache and asks what to do with Inomata, asleep with the children. Ryu decides to let her sleep. Hayato jokes that Ryu has another child to look after. Inomata suddenly awakens, asking the time. Hayato tells her it's lunchtime. Ryu says they tried to wake her, but she kept sleeping. Blushing, Inomata exclaims she doesn't skip class without a good reason. Kotaro stares at the tiger on his sweater. Ryu asks why, but Kotaro doesn't answer. Kirin explains he's sad because Taka insulted him, saying it's dumb to wear a tiger sweater without seeing a real tiger. Taka insists he did nothing wrong. Hayato glares, hits Taka's head, and scolds him, pushing him to apologize. Taka cries, and Ryo diffuses the situation. Kotaro nods, indicating he's not too upset. Taka turns to his brother, exclaiming that Hayato must hate him. Hayato asks what he's talking about, and Ryu assures Taka that Hayato doesn't hate him. Hayato bluntly says he doesn't particularly like or hate him, stunning both. Taka runs to Usaida, bawling that he hates Hayato. Aghast, Ryu shakes Hayato, who explains that little brothers go beyond love or hate. Ryu sighs, saying Taka is too young to understand. Hayato dismisses this, picks up Taka, and leaves with him. Taka screams that Hayato is not his brother anymore. Ryu suggests to Kotaro that they go to the zoo this weekend. Kotaro agrees, and Ryu thinks about using his savings for tickets. Kirin wants to see the giraffes, Takuma the zebras, and Kazuma the horses. Ryu stutters, suggesting they spend weekends with their parents. Usaida appears and tells Ryu not to play favorites. He suggests taking all the kids and decides to tag along, as he can get paid for working weekends. Usaida announces the trip for Sunday, exciting the children. At dinner, Ryu tells the chairwoman about the field trip. She gives permission but refuses to pay Usaida since the mothers are also going. When asked if there's anything else, Ryu invites her to join, but she immediately refuses. On the day of the trip, Saikawa gives Ryu a large box with lunches for him and Kotaro, plus extra to share. He also hands Ryu an envelope of money from the chairwoman, asking him to keep receipts. Ryu promises to use it responsibly. Saikawa offers a special snack set for noble Ryuichi-sama, but Ryu, already carrying a lot, declines. Ryu calls Kotaro, who is waiting at the door, and they head out as Saikawa wishes them a good trip. At the zoo, Ryu offers to pay Usaida with the chairwoman's money, but Usaida refuses, showing his camera to sell photos to absent fathers. Hayato, in baseball clothes, apologizes for being late, carrying a tantrum-throwing Taka. Hayato explains he has club activities, and his mother is busy. He sets Taka down and asks if he can join alone, apologizing for bothering Ryu. Hayato says he planned to skip practice, but Taka protests. Ryu urges Hayato to tell Taka he likes him, but Hayato bluntly says he doesn't particularly like him. Taka overhears, runs away with Kotaro. Ryu chases them as Hayato calls out not to trouble Ryu and Kotaro. The group first visits the elephant, and Ryu is relieved to see Taka enjoying himself without his brother. Usaida takes several pictures as they explore other exhibits. Ryu excitedly tells Kotaro it's time for the tiger exhibit. The tiger roars, scaring all the children except Kotaro, who stands in front of the glass. Usaida thinks Kotaro is unfazed, but Ryu sees his face filled with fear, realizing Kotaro would be the first eaten in the wild. He picks up Kotaro and pats him. Usaida then calls them over to see the tiger cubs. Outside, Taka tells Kotaro the big tiger wasn't scary, and Kotaro nods. Usaida announces it's time for lunch, and Ryu goes to fetch it. Kotaro stares at a family, making Ryu think of his parents. Usaida calls him, lamenting being the only man among 3 married ladies. He tells Ryu to hurry so they can all eat together. The children and their mothers sit at a picnic table, and Takuma and Kirin urge Ryu and Kotaro to join. Usaida asks a quiet Taka if he misses his brother, but Taka turns red and calls him an idiot. The mothers compliment Saikawa's cute animal-shaped lunches. Yayoi wonders if Saikawa could teach her the recipes, and Umi comments on how delicious they are. After lunch, Usaida takes pictures of the children holding rabbits, confident the fathers will love them. Ryu holds a bunny as Kotaro points to a sheep and calls it Shaggy, like the chairwoman. Everyone agrees the sheep resembles her. Umi mentions Yuko means little sheep. Usaida tells Ryu and Kotaro to pose with the sheep, and Kotaro touches the sheep as Usaida takes the photo. Taka shows Kotaro a hawk, bragging that his name means hawk. Ryu tells Taka that Hayabusa, peregrine falcon, also contains Hayato's name. Taka pouts, denies Hayato is his brother, and walks away with Kotaro. Ryu calls after him, but Usaida assures him he'll be fine. Outside the gift shop, Umi calls it the final battlefield. While Yayoi urges them to stay strong, Kirin, Takuma, and Kazuma grab merchandise, begging their mothers to buy it. Ryu picks a sheep keychain for the chairwoman and tells Usaida he'll buy something. Usaida waits with Taka, who stares at bird-stuffed animals. Usaida offers to buy souvenirs for him and Hayato. Turning around, he finds Taka gone, having run after a man resembling Hayato. The others arrive, and Usaida realizes Taka is missing. As it gets dark, Taka runs after his brother, but realizes the man isn't Hayato when he looks at his watch. Hearing the zoo is about to close, Taka runs, trips, and falls, crying for his brother. Hayato finds him, picks him up, and calls him an idiot for crying. Taka insists he's not crying. Ryu, holding Kotaro, runs to them, relieved. Hayato hits Taka and tells him to apologize, and Taka smiles, rubbing his head. The mothers say goodbye to Ryu and Hayato as they carry their little brothers. Ryu is glad to see Hayato and asks if he came because he was worried. Hayato denies it, saying his mother hid him for leaving Taka alone. Ryu is still glad, knowing Taka was lonely without him. Kotaro and Taka fall asleep, but Taka mumbles he loves his brother. Hayato calls him an idiot, but blushes slightly, admitting he doesn't particularly hate him. Ryu teases Hayato for being bashful, annoying him. Hayato says Kotaro is too attached to Ryu. Ryu thinks that, whether laughing or crying, they are still brothers. The children play as Usaida checks the calendar and calls them over, realizing it's Valentine's Day. He asks if their mothers sent anything for him and Ryu. The children say they have nothing, and Usaida sighs. A few female classmates discuss giving chocolate to boys. Yamane tells Kawada she gave some out but won't say to whom. A girl asks Ushimaru if she's given any, making her flustered. Usokawa complains the school banned Valentine's chocolate, but Saganuma doubts they'll search bags. Usokawa asks Reiichi if he's received any chocolate. When he denies it, Usokawa desperately asks if Ushimaru gave him any. Ushimaru overhears and secretly feels relieved that he hasn't received any chocolate yet. Ryu sees a girl approach Hayato with chocolates, but he declines, saying he hates them. Usokawa and Saganuma are angry. Kawada and Yamane discuss the boy's immaturity. Kawada mentions smart and handsome Yagi. Another girl admires aloof Nezu with the second best grades. Ryu thinks Inomata would be furious at people breaking the chocolate ban. In the gifted class, girls offer Yagi and Nezu chocolates. Inomata angrily scolds them for breaking rules. The girls argue back, calling her a stick in the mud. Yagi smiles, suggesting they give him chocolates off campus. The girls sit down disappointed with their chocolates. Yagi leans on Inomata's desk, asking if she was near the daycare center. She affirms. He expresses his wish to join the babysitting club. Inomata orders him to ask the club himself and leaves. Yagi tells the girls he finds children cute. Nezu watches him. Inomata walks down the hallway, reflecting on the girls' words. She admits she's a stick in the mud and blames herself for ruining fun. She tears up, vowing not to join the babysitting club, fearing she'll upset the children. Wiping her tears, she insists studying is her only joy. Ryu blushes, asking Yagi if he really wants to join. Yagi smiles and Ryu introduces him to Usaida and the children. Yagi, unfazed by the information, introduces himself. Ryu recalls the girls calling Yagi nice and hot. Yagi dismisses this, complimenting Ryu and Hayato. He also praises Taka, who eagerly agrees. Yagi's compliments flatter the children, and Ryu is amazed at how quickly Yagi connects with them. Inomata overhears students whispering that Yagi lies about liking children to impress girls and has been seen glaring at them. Shocked, she runs to the daycare center. Yagi reaches out to Kotaro, his smile worrying Ryu. Just before touching Kotaro, Inomata bursts in, ordering Yagi to stop. She is horrified by blood on the floor, but it's just Yagi with a nosebleed from poking Kotaro's cheeks. Inomata sighs in relief, realizing there are no major problems. Nezu arrives, telling Yagi he cannot join the club. Ryu recognizes him as the aloof, handsome, second-best grades boy. Nezu says Yagi is too much of a pervert to babysit. Stunned, Yagi insists he likes children normally. Nezu argues that normal people don't get nosebleeds from poking cheeks. Yagi claims it's from eating too much chocolate, but Nezu reminds him he returned all the chocolate after Inomata's warning. Nezu smiles, telling Yagi to stop lying. Nezu drags Yagi out, apologizing for the disturbance. Yagi admits he might cause trouble if he joins, but asks to visit and poke their cheeks. Ryu stutters as Takuma grabs Kazuma's cheeks. Usaida pokes Midori's cheeks, admitting it's fun. Taka asks about nosebleeds from chocolate, and Nezu clarifies it's it's not the cause. The children eagerly shout for chocolate. Kirin declares it's chocolate day, and they campaign for it. Yagi tries to offer chocolate, but Nezu stops him. Taka pokes Inomata, expressing his desire for chocolate. Inomata sternly warns that giving chocolate on school grounds is prohibited. The children tear up, but Inomata blushes, promising to bring the best chocolate tomorrow if they wait. The children cheer, and Yagi also prepares to bring chocolate. Ryu and Kotaro walk home with Inomata. Ryu apologizes for keeping her all day, but she says she had free time. Ryu runs into a store with Kotaro and returns with a small box of chocolates for Inomata, thanking her for today. He says it's fine since they're not on campus. Inomata admits she's a stick in the mud, and Ryu agrees, adding he likes that about her. Ryu and Kotaro leave, and Inomata blushes, holding the chocolates. Ushimaru, watching with chocolate, wonders about their relationship. Yagi picks chocolates for the children and gets a nosebleed picturing Kotaro eating. Nezu gives him a tissue and tells him to hurry. Yagi asks about chocolate for Nezu's brother, but Nezu says no. Saikawa offers gourmet chocolates to Ryu and Kotaro. The chairwoman reminds them to brush teeth. Kotaro gives Ryu a chocolate, making him smile. Inomata furrows her eyebrows at the chocolate store display, reminding herself she's choosing chocolates for the children. Ryu and classmates shiver in gym shorts in the freezing cold. Saganuma protests. Ryu trembles, asking Hayato how he stays still. Hayato admits he's cold, and Ebizawa calls him a cyborg for not shivering. Ryu laughs as Usaida calls his name. Usaida, standing by a wagon with the children, explains they're taking a walk. The children eagerly run to Ryu, soothing him with their warmth. They try to get him to join, but he has class. Ryu asks about the wagon, and Usaida says he uses it for walks, calling the children animals. They protest, calling him an idiot. Usaida smirks, joking they'll be taken by a creep, scaring the children. Ryu tells Usaida not to scare them, but warns about strangers. Usaida remarks on the children's energy and sarcastically tells Ryu's shivering classmates he feels cold just looking at them. Frustrated, they call Ryu's name, then smile and say friends should care for each other. They creepily reach for the children, calling them natural heat packs. As Usaida watches in amusement, a mysterious man in sunglasses, a hat, and a mask watches from behind a tree. Taka runs to his brother for protection. Usokawa catches a crying Kazuma, while Ryu stops students from grabbing Kirin. Ryu sees Takuma crawling into the bushes and calls out. The mysterious man picks up Takuma, causing Ryu to panic. He gives Kotaro to Ebizawa and chases after Takuma. Hayato throws his shoe at the man, but Takuma smiles and calls him Kokun. The man falls back, holding Takuma up. Takuma smiles excitedly as he flies through the air. Usaida compliments Hayato's pitch. Ryu asks if Takuma knows him, and Takuma says he's their father. The gym teacher tells students to run a marathon and says Hayato and Ryu can resume after returning the man, causing protests. At the daycare, the man introduces himself as Mamazuka Kusuke, Takuma and Kazuma's father. Ryu apologizes for not recognizing him and admits he jumped to conclusions. Hayato says his outfit was suspicious but also apologizes. Usaida explains Kusuke is an actor and reenacts his dental hygiene commercial. But Ryu and Hayato haven't seen it. Kusuke explains he wore a disguise to avoid causing a scene while checking on his kids, but feels embarrassed thinking too highly of himself. Ryu reassures him, asking Usaida for help. Usaida acknowledges Kusuke as Takuma and Kazuma's father. Kusuke, kneeling and crying, admits it's his first day off in 6 months and wanted father-son time. He realizes his kids just want to play at the daycare. They don't call him father, making him feel like a weird old man. Ryu consoles him, reminding him Takuma introduced him as their father, and suggests he stay and play with his sons for the day. Kusuke agrees to stay, and Ryu calls Takuma and Kazuma over, telling them their father wants to play with them. He hands Kazuma to Kusuke, saying he and Hayato have class. Kusuke thanks Ryu, but Kazuma cries in fear as he's held. Kusuke thinks he should leave, but Ryu stops him, explaining Kazuma doesn't like being held by unfamiliar people. Hayato adds this only worsens the situation. Ryu urges Kusuke not to widen the gap with his sons. Tearfully, Kusuke stays, and Ryu promises to help him show his fatherly side. Kusuke is touched by Ryu's encouragement, but Hayato says the children are seeing the worst side of a father. Takuma calls Kusuke a crybaby, and the other children join in, calling him lame. Usaida says this is a good opportunity for children to see adults' flaws. Ryu wants to show the good side of Kusuke. Kusuke plays with the children, but Kazuma cries each time. Defeated, Kusuke sits in the corner. Usaida whispers to Ryu that Kazuma must hate his father. Kusuke decides to leave, apologizing to his sons for interrupting their fun and saying he'll wait at home. He waves goodbye, telling Usaida, Ryu, and Hayato to take care of them. Kusuke walks to the school gates, but is recognized by a girl, soon surrounded by a crowd asking for autographs. He hears Papa and sees Ryu and Hayato lifting Takuma and Kazuma. The twins call for their father, and Kusuke tries to move through the crowd. Umi blows a whistle and shows a picture of the chairwoman, warning the girls to return to class or be held back. The girls leave, and Umi explains to Kusuke that Kazuma's fear might be her fault for showing them his movie where he played a kidnapper. Kusuke panics, asking why she showed those movies, but Umi says he was cool in the role, and the twins wanted to see his work. Takuma and Kazuma ask if he'll play with them, and Kusuke hugs them, tearing up. Ryu reflects that understanding family feelings is both hard and simple. Ryu talks to his parents, mentioning it feels like spring. Hayato says goodbye, and Ryu smiles, telling his parents they are now high school students. High schoolers must choose a club, and the bulletin board is full of flyers. Ryu drew a poster for the babysitting club, but finds no space left. He heads to the daycare center, where Kotaro and other children excitedly greet him, causing him to fall down. Ryu's poster lands on Kotaro's head. Usaida looks at the poster, and Ryu asks him to remove it from Kotaro's head. Usaida asks about the bulletin board, and Ryu explains it's full. Usaida decides they'll visit the high school clubs on their walk. Ryu tucks the poster into his pocket and follows. Embarrassed, Ryu follows Usaida and the children through the halls. The children parade and dance, drawing attention. Kirin opens the drama club door, calling to her mother, Yayoi, who is dressed as a creepy ghost. Yayoi scares the children and apologizes. She congratulates Ryu on reaching high school and invites him to join the drama club, claiming he has talent. Ryu politely declines, explaining he is busy with the babysitting club. Kotaro pulls on Ryu's pant leg, pointing to the other children running off for sweets. Ryu calls to the children and Usaida, who has special FX makeup. Umi exits into the hallway, and Takuma and Kazuma run to her. Ryu explains they are checking out clubs. Taka and Kirin sniff the air, noticing a sweet smell, and the children run towards it. Umi is glad they are having fun and excuses herself to go to her own club. Kotaro holds Ryu's hand as Ryu tells the children to wait. He also notices the sweet smell. Kotaro spots an ant inside, surprising Ryu. Usaida squats beside them, and Ryu realizes they are losing track of the children. He orders Usaida to remove his makeup and goes after the children. In the kitchen, the cooking club apologizes to the children, saying the cookies are not ready. Inomata from the club informs them they are from the babysitting club. Ryu enters, asking if anyone has seen little kids, and the children greet him. Inomata angrily scolds Ryu for letting them run around carelessly, urging him to watch them more carefully to prevent anything bad from happening. Inomata realizes she scared the club members and children. She blushes and apologizes. A cooking club member says she showed she cares about them, and others say they saw a cool side of her. Ryu apologizes for disturbing the club and tells the children to leave, denying them sweets. The cooking club president suggests Ryu join, but a member reminds her he's busy with the babysitting club. Ryu carries a tantrum-throwing Taka and reflects on his club situation, doubting the babysitting club. He tells Taka they will look at the baseball club next, calming him. Outside, a soccer club member asks if he still does the babysitting club, commenting it must be tough. Taka eagerly watches the baseball club practice, but gets upset when Hayato looks away. Taka yells, and Hayato hits him after being teased by teammates. Ryu apologizes to Hayato for interrupting practice, but Hayato dismisses it, calling the team weak. Hayato tells his brother not to be selfish around Ryu. As he returns to practice, teammates tease him about his comments. Ryu watches other athletes, not noticing Kotaro pulling on his pant leg. Kotaro looks at ants, then at his brother and the baseball club, where Ryu is looking. Usaida also watches Ryu. The children call Ryu, asking where next. Ryu decides to put up the club poster and asks Usaida to watch the children. He asks Kotaro to come, but Kotaro shakes his head. Ryu awkwardly runs to the bulletin board. Usaida thinks it might have been a bit cruel to bring Ryu along. He asks Kotaro, running off, where he's going. Ryu places the babysitting club poster in a corner of the bulletin board, then squats and buries his head in his arms. He feels Kotaro is doing better without him. Hayato, carrying Kotaro, asks Ryu if he should give his club form to him. Ryu suggests the baseball club, but Hayato hands him a form for the babysitting club, saying he wants to join both and can make half the meetings. Ryu asks Hayato why he's joining. Hayato says his idiot brother is there, holding Kotaro out to Ryu. Kotaro sensed Ryu was depressed and wanted to help. Ryu hears the children running towards him with small bags. Taka and Kirin tell him they received cookies from Inomata and want to give them to Ryu. They encourage him to cheer up. Ryu suggests they eat the cookies together. He asks Usaida if he seemed depressed, and Usaida admits it was noticeable. Everyone sits together at the daycare as Usaida, Ryu, and Hayato wear matching aprons. Ryu admires his apron while Hayato calls it lame. Inomata sometimes brings cookies to the daycare, but the children struggle to bite through them. Hayato jokes he could break a tooth, and Inomata angrily says they don't have to eat them. Ryu wakes up with Kotaro asleep on his chest. He gently wakes Kotaro and realizes his voice has changed. The chairwoman bursts in, scolding Ryu for staying in bed. She orders him up but gasps when Ryu falls. Saikawa congratulates him on his voice change, jokingly, but the chairwoman smacks him with her cane and sends him for a thermometer. She insists Ryu follows orders, taking Kotaro away, warning of double trouble if he's sick too. Kotaro clings to the door, dismayed. The chairwoman tells him they need to make medicine for Ryu. Kotaro agrees if it helps his brother. Ryu struggles back into bed, hoping Kotaro doesn't call the chairwoman Shaggy. Meanwhile, Kotaro does just that. The chairwoman, holding a wool blanket, demands clarification, but Kotaro repeats the nickname. She covers him with the blanket, explaining they need to warm Ryu inside and out, and leads Kotaro, who follows with the blanket on his head. The chairwoman aggressively chops a lemon, making Kotaro imagine a demon lady. She gives Kotaro half a lemon in a cup, instructing him to squeeze out juice. She plans to add honey and water for Ryu's drink. She makes rice gruel while Kotaro struggles with the lemon, eventually getting a single drop. Refusing help, he continues until he fills the bottom of the cup. The chairwoman finds a lemon juicer, but lets Kotaro continue juicing himself. Kotaro finishes, but knocks over the juice. The chairwoman gives him the other half of the lemon, suggesting he try again. As Kotaro squeezes, she cleans up the spill, noting his determination. The chairwoman brings rice gruel and asks Saikawa about Ryu. Saikawa says Ryu is sleeping, his fever lower but still high. Saikawa asks about waking him for dinner, but the chairwoman thinks he must be exhausted. Saikawa closes the door gently as Ryu dreams about his family. Ryu dreams of his parents leaving on a trip, saying he's responsible. Ryu argues he's not and tries to convince them to stay. His mother feels bad and suggests taking Kotaro along. They promise to return soon. Ryu begs them to stay, pounding on an invisible wall, pleading not to take Kotaro. As the door closes, Ryu tears up in his sleep. Kotaro sees his brother crying and tries to wipe away his tears. Ryu wakes up, his eyes stinging from lemon juice. The chairwoman explains and gives him a hot drink Kotaro made. Ryu thanks the heavens for not taking Kotaro away, patting his head and thanking him. Ryu admits Kotaro's warmth has helped him. The chairwoman picks up Kotaro, telling him he must leave, despite his confusion. Ryu says he doesn't want Kotaro to catch his cold. The chairwoman instructs Ryu to eat his rice gruel and nap while Saikawa offers ice cream. After dinner and ice cream, Ryu sleeps peacefully, free from bad dreams. Kotaro curls up under a chair. The chairwoman slams her cane, demanding how long he'll stay there. Saikawa offers ice cream to entice him out, but Kotaro continues to pout. Yukari drops off Midori at the daycare center. Ryu holds Midori and suggests reading a picture book with Kotaro. While changing Midori's diaper, he runs out of wipes. As he refills them, Midori crawls to the door. A red-haired student opens the door, disgusted by the smell, and falls as Midori pulls his pant leg. Ryu and Kotaro watch in shock, causing the student to scold them. Ryu, holding Midori, realizes the student isn't here to join the babysitting club. The student plugs his nose, complaining about the smell, and demands Ryu do something. Ryu kneels down and sternly asks his purpose. The student calls Midori a poop factory, and Kotaro a space cadet. Ryu defends Kotaro as the student asks about Midori Sawatari. Ryu asks what he wants with Midori. The student explains he wishes to see the face of his future daughter. Ryu is confused, noting his student uniform. The student, Inui, introduces himself and says age doesn't matter in love, despite Yukari being married. Ryu panics, but Inui scoffs, saying Ryu wouldn't understand due to lack of romantic experience. Inui exits, believing neither Midori nor Yukari is present. Usaida tries to get Ryu's attention, but Ryu is dazed. Usaida explains that he and Kotaro were staring into space when he arrived. Usaida apologizes for not reading to Kotaro and offers to do so after class. Ryu asks about Midori's father, and Usaida says he's overseas, confirming Yukari is not widowed or divorced. Ryu is horrified at the thought of Yukari cheating with Inui. Usaida sarcastically asks if Ryu likes older women, but Ryu denies it. Ryu asks Hayato, who bluntly says it's their choice. Ryu argues the cheater has a child, but Hayato reasons the romance is between the adults. Ryu admits Hayato's argument is reasonable, but believes the child still matters. In class, Ryu thinks about never being in love. He recalls people saying Ushimaru is cute and stares at her, but feels no attraction. Ushimaru blushes when she notices Ryu staring. In the hallway, Ryu decides not to ask Yukari directly. He bumps into Inomata, who scolds him. Ryu asks her perspective on adultery, and she says cheaters deserve the death sentence. He asks if she's ever had a crush, and Inomata describes herself as a dull person who hasn't experienced love yet. Ryu returns to the daycare and sees the children sticking snot on a desperate Inui. Usaida lolls around, welcoming Ryu, while Kotaro holds out the Cinderella book. Ryu helps the children blow their noses. Inui accuses Ryu of lying about Midori, but Ryu argues he never said she wasn't there. Ryu insists it's wrong to pursue someone with a husband and child. Inui agrees, claiming Yukari's husband is in heaven. Yukari enters, greeting Inui as Mr. I forgot something. Inui blushes as she finishes work early. Inui, red-faced, takes her hands but stutters when Midori cries. Yukari comforts Midori, assuring her that her father is coming home soon, stunning Inui. Usaida asks if the dig is over, and Yukari explains that her husband is returning for university work. Inui asks about her husband, and Yukari explains he's returning from Turkey. Inui dismisses what he was going to say and offers to watch Midori if Yukari and her husband want a date night. Yukari thanks him for his kindness. Inui sulks as the children attack him with toy swords. He angrily confronts Usaida for knowing about Yukari's husband. Usaida explains he found it funny and played along. Inui feels embarrassed, but Ryu assures him he looked cool and mature. Inui says people will make fun of him, then admires Ryu for taking care of kids. He jokes that he got the order wrong. Kids come after falling in love and marriage. Inui laughs as Ryu looks at Kotaro with the Cinderella book. Ryu apologizes to Kotaro and reads the picture book to the children. He reflects, wondering if he will ever find his own love someday. Ryu pretends to be a dragon king, naming Midori the Devil Queen. The children introduce themselves as Ranger 5, Taka as Ranger Red, Takuma and Kazuma as Ranger Yellow, Kotaro as Ranger Blue, and Kirin as Ranger Pink. Kirin, coloring with crayons, ignores them. Taka impatiently tells her it's Ranger Pink's turn. Taka assigns Hayato the role of monster, but Hayato refuses. Ryu sighs and tells him not to just watch. Kirin stands up, saying she won't play childish games anymore, and insists they must study instead. Ryu notes she's talking like Inomata and tries to tell her that playing is also important. Kirin shows her drawing of witches, saying if they study, they can become great witches. Ryu is relieved she still has dreams. Takuma and Kazuma want to be witches, but Hayato bluntly says boys can't be witches. Taka argues that witches aren't real, but heroes are. Kirin says her mother told her heroes are just actors, but witches are real. Hayato says neither is real, but Ryu covers his mouth. Ryu claims both are real to stop the fight, but Taka and Kirin bicker. Kotaro tries to stop them, but gets pushed aside. Kotaro rolls to Usaida, who wakes up to see Taka and Kirin insulting each other. The next day, Taka brings a picture of a hero carrying him, happily telling the others all the rangers were there. Usaida jeers at Taka's weird facial expression. Taka accuses Kirin of having no evidence witches exist. Usaida corrects his pronunciation, but Taka ignores him, telling Kirin her picture books don't count. Kirin yells that she does have evidence, declaring she'll fly to prove witches exist. Outside, Kirin tries to fly on a broom, but Usaida says she won't succeed. Taka tells the others witches aren't real and to play heroes inside. Kirin stays to practice. Usaida tells a concerned Ryu to go back to class, reasoning Kirin will eventually give up. Hayato tells Ryu to tell Kirin witches don't exist. Ryu argues against shattering a child's dream, asking Hayato if he believed things as a kid. Hayato admits he dreamed of throwing a disappearing curveball. Ryu points out that Hayato believed things too, but Hayato says he'll make it happen in the future. Inomata scolds them for talking in front of the bathroom. Ryu apologizes and moves. Inomata admits she overheard them talking about children's dreams and asks if something happened. Hayato asks if she just wanted to join the conversation. Inomata blushes and walks away angrily. Ryu calls after her, saying they could use a girl's opinion. They move to the staircase, and Ryu explains the situation. He hesitates to shatter Kirin's dreams. Inomata offers to help by bringing documents. During lunch, Inomata brings books about witch trials and hunting to Ryu's desk. Other students wonder why the top student is in their classroom. Inomata explains these events in history. Hayato and Ryu agree they can't show such terrifying history to children. Flustered, Inomata yells she can't understand children's feelings and leaves angrily. Ushimaru blushes, wondering about their relationship. In class, Ryu reflects on Inomata's personality, finding her weird but sincere and kind. He then imagines the chairwoman as a witch, scolding him to study. Deciding to buy magic books from the library, he looks out the window. Meanwhile, Usaida asks Kirin to come inside, but she resolves to practice. Usaida lets her stay as long as she's not jumping. Kotaro shows him Kirin's witch book, and Usaida reads it to him. Takuma and Kazuma join, leaving Taka upset. Kirin sees a ledge to jump off. Ryu, carrying magic books, sees her about to jump and sprints to cushion her fall. Kirin sobs, and Ryu wonders if it's because witches aren't real or the fall. Usaida sighs, and Ryu admits Hayato was right. He should have told her witches aren't real, and flying flying on a broom is impossible. The chairwoman asks why Kieran is crying. Kieran says she can't fly on a broomstick. The chairwoman says it's 100 years too early for her to learn. Kieran asks if the chairwoman can fly, and she replies to leave it to her imagination, urging them inside as it's about to rain. Inside, Taka tells Kieran they can play witches and heroes together. Kieran and the children smile as Ryu admits he almost believed the chairwoman was really a witch for a moment. In the Nezu household, Chukichi sews while Suikichi and Kyuko box up milk cartons. Chukichi asks where Kichi is, and Suikichi says he's asking their father for a favor. They suddenly hear Kichi yelling that he's leaving before slamming the door and running away. Ryu hangs up laundry as Kotaro stares at ants. He tells Kotaro to stay on the grounds. Kotaro pulls on his pant leg, leading him through the bushes. Ryu asks if he found a cat, then sees Kichi stuck in the bush, but doesn't recognize him. Ryu calls him Nezu-kun, while Kotaro calls him a mouse. Kichi struggles to free himself, and Ryu offers to help, but Kichi slaps his hand away, refusing to return home. Kotaro is upset that Kichi hit his brother, but Ryu pats Kotaro, dismissing the concern. Ryu asks if Kichi is Chukichi's brother, and Kichi nods. Kichi asks if Ryu knows his brother, and Ryu says they go to the same school. Ryu asks if something happened at home, but Kichi stays silent. Ryu continues doing laundry, telling Kichi to call him if he wants to talk. Kichi asks why Ryu is doing laundry if he's rich. Ryu blushes, explaining that the chairwoman is rich, but he and Kotaro are freeloaders. Ryu returns to the laundry, instructing Kotaro to wait with Kichi. Ryu realizes he doesn't have Chukichi's number. Later, Kichi warns Kotaro to get away as Yagi approaches. Yagi squishes Kotaro's cheeks, getting a nosebleed, and Ryu and Inomata appear. Inomata angrily warns Yagi to stop or she'll call the police. Yagi apologizes, thinking Inomata also wants to squish Kotaro's cheeks, angering her further. Ryu explains he called Yagi because he didn't have Chukichi's number and is surprised Inomata came along. Inomata defends herself, saying she would never be close to Yagi. Yagi laughs, saying he invited her along, claiming she loves children. Inomata angrily denies this, but admits she likes kids. Ryu is glad Inomata has a friend. Inomata asks why Ryu called Yagi over. Ryu says Chukichi has work, so Yagi came instead. Inomata notes that Morinomiya Academy forbids part-time jobs, but Yagi explains he got permission to support his family of 8. She is impressed by Chukichi's work ethic and grades. Yagi says Inomata should be impressed by herself too, being first in her grade. Inomata argues that studying is all she does and yells that she has no work or friends. Yagi asks Kichi if he is Suikichi or Kichi, fawning over his cuteness. Kichi gets upset when Yagi touches his head. Kichi asks Ryu why he called Yagi over, and Ryu awkwardly apologizes. Inomata scolds Kichi for refusing to go home and causing trouble. She points out his brother's hard work and job and school, yet Kichi is trespassing and running away. Ryu tries to step in, but Inomata calls Kichi spoiled for causing his family trouble. Kichi begins to cry, explaining he wanted to see if Ryu had video games. Inomata asks if he ran away for a game, but Ryu thinks there must be an important reason. Suddenly, Suikichi appears, arguing that kids have the right to important things. Suikichi demands if Yagi did anything to his brother and gets angry when Yagi says he tousled Kichi's hair. Suikichi explains that games are important to Kichi because he is the only one in his class without the game. Kichi's best friend kept bragging, despite knowing Kichi's family is poor. Kichi cries, saying he loves his family but hates being poor. Yagi laughs, saying this situation takes him back. Inomata scolds him for laughing, and Yagi recalls a memory of Chukichi in elementary school. Chukichi was the only one without a popular game. Yagi offered him his game to borrow, but Chukichi declined, saying he would make one himself. When asked if he could make it right away, Chukichi explained it might take years to get the parts. Yagi asked to play it once made, but Chukichi said if he doesn't want a game, he won't make one. Chukichi decided to make things if he wanted them. Yagi reflects on what he learned from Chukichi, admitting it impacted him as a child who got everything he wanted. It was the first time he thought someone was cool. Kichi, still depressed, doesn't know how to make games. Yagi tells Kichi that Chukichi's coolness comes from being in a household where nothing is bought for him. Kichi thinks about Chukichi and his hard work. Kichi reaches out, telling Ryu he's ready to come out of the bush. Ryu gently pulls him out while Yagi pulls out Suikichi. Kichi takes Suikichi's hand, saying they should go home together. He tells Inomata he will study to make video games like his older brother. They hear a doorbell and Chukichi enters with boxes of manju. He apologizes to Ryu for the trouble and gives Ryu and Inomata a box. Ryu notes it wasn't a problem. Inomata asks why she got a box, and Chukichi explains his brothers like her. Kichi apologizes, and Chukichi forgives them because they learned something. He hands Kichi a bag with the game he wanted. Suikichi asks if Chukichi made it, but Chukichi explains he took over shifts for a colleague who sold it cheap. Sukichi told him about the game, and their father provided the money. Kichi asks if it's alright to have the game, and Chukichi dismisses his concern. He kicks Yagi's leg, saying half of what he said back then was a bluff. He pats Kichi's head, telling him to have fun and share the game with Sukichi and the others. Ryu thanks Inumata for her help, making her flustered. That evening, Ryu and Kotaro enjoy manju and tea. Saikawa pours tea, mentioning he saw two butts sticking out of the hedge in front of the mansion. Ryu spits out his tea, realizing Saikawa means the Nezu twins. Saikawa notes it was quite an interesting sight. Usaida holds a toy car out of the children's reach, asking why Ryu can't come for lunch. Ryu says he must finish his chemistry report. Usaida mockingly keeps the toy away, calling Ryu's teacher a bully. Ryu tells Usaida not to bully the children and pats Kotaro's head as he returns to class. Usaida decides they should have lunch, but notices Ryu left his lunchbox. The children hungrily stare at it, but Usaida says they can't eat it. Usaida figures Ryu will come back for it. Kotaro's eyes sparkle as he pulls on Usaida's pant leg, wanting to take Ryu's lunch to him. Taka and the others ask to go, but Usaida tells them to eat their own lunches first. The children quickly eat their lunches. Kotaro continues to stare at Usaida, so he lets Kotaro deliver Ryu's lunch. He makes a tag with Ryu's name and class on it, and instructs Kotaro to ask for help if needed. Kotaro walks out of the daycare as Usaida waves, worried about Kotaro going alone. He sees Inui outside and comes up with an idea, which Midori imitates. Inui walks outside with his lunch bag, lamenting his lack of time with Yukari. He thinks Yutaka must be enjoying a special lunch from her. Inui resolves to get over his romance. A photo of Yukari at the zoo appears in front of him, and he grabs it, blushing. Usaida, holding a fishing rod connected to the photo, sarcastically says he caught him. The children watch and call Inui an idiot. Several students stare as Kotaro walks down the hallways, whispering among themselves. Realizing Kotaro is on his first errand, they offer to help, but Kotaro insists on going alone. The students are honored and apologize, cheering him on. One student says Kotaro's bravery gives him courage for his college entrance exams. Inui, watching Kotaro, is upset the students aren't helping. He wonders how he ended up looking after Kotaro, recalling Usaida's offer of a picture of Yukari. Inui impatiently watches as Kotaro takes his first step up the stairs. Ryu checks his bag, wondering where his lunch is. Hayato, with bread in his mouth, asks what is wrong, but Ryu can't understand him. Ryu explains he forgot his lunch and tells Hayato not to speak with food in his mouth. Hayato protests, holding the bread. Ryu plans to run to the daycare center for his lunch before starting his report. Ushimaru offers her lunch to Ryu, saying she is on a diet. Ryu is surprised, and the other male classmates are irritated. Ryu says he can't eat her lunch, reasoning dieting is unhealthy. Just then, Ebizawa holds Ryu, telling him not to worry. All the male classmates give their lunches to Ryu, refusing to let him only eat Ushimaru's lunch. Ryu's desk is piled with food, and his classmates insist he eat it all. At the daycare center, the children nap peacefully. Usaida yawns, realizing he should have told Ryu that Kotaro was delivering his lunch. He takes out his phone, but assumes Ryu has it off. Usaida lies down to sleep. Kotaro climbs the stairs while Inui impatiently watches. Two students bump into Kotaro, causing him to drop the lunchbox. The male student apologizes and asks why there is a small child at school. The lunchbox tumbles down the stairs, about to spill, when Inui, wearing a paper bag on his head, catches it. He ties it back together and hands it to Kotaro, who thanks him. Inui decides to stay with Kotaro and walks up the stairs, thinking he doesn't remember a time when he couldn't climb stairs easily. Inui ushers students aside, warning them Kotaro is coming up. He reflects that he wouldn't have worked as hard as Kotaro. Ryu finishes his report and winces from eating all the food his classmates provided. He asks Hayato if he's finished, but Hayato nonchalantly replies that he's given up. A classmate tells Ryu someone is here to see him. Ryu looks over to see Kotaro holding his lunch. Ryu asks if Kotaro brought it all by himself. Saganuma asks if Ryu will eat more after already eating the classmate's food. Hayato shoves bread into Saganuma's mouth, telling him to shut up before Kotaro hears. Ryu hopes Kotaro will forgive him for lying and tells him he is very hungry. He brings Kotaro to the stairwell to eat, while classmates watch with concern. Reina tells Ushimaru her competition is Kotaro. Ushimaru blushes, insisting she really is on a diet. Ryu opens the lunchbox and sees the contents are messed up, disappointing Kotaro. Ryu feeds Kotaro some rice, and they eat together. Ryu congratulates Kotaro for completing his first errand. Inui wipes his nose, touched by Ryu and Kotaro eating together. Saikawa hands Inui a handkerchief. Inui thanks him, but freaks out when he realizes Saikawa suddenly appeared behind him. Saikawa says he was also touched. During lunch, Kawada asks Ushimaru what she likes about Ryu. Ushimaru turns red and panics, warning them that Ryu might overhear, but Yamane assures her he is not around. The boys in the classroom listen jealously as Ushimaru admits she has feelings for Ryu. Kawada sees Ryu's appeal, calling him the comfy type, and Yamane recalls him picking up her eraser. Kawada mentions Hayato is also attractive, and girls in other classes like him too. Yamane calls him hot, but another girl says he's a little scary. Yamane argues his scary atmosphere makes him hot, and his role in the babysitting club shows he has a caring side. Kawada says she prefers Ryu's type. Ushimaru despairs, realizing how popular Ryu is. Kawada assures her they are not rivals, and Yamane agrees. Ushimaru blushes, saying they do not have to hold back because of her. Kawada clarifies, and another girl reminds her that her competition is Ryu's little brother. The girls admit Ryu's girlfriend would never be his top priority. Yamane brings up Inomata, noting she and Ryu are friendly. One girl says Inomata is not the romance type and only cares about studying. Ebizawa sees Inomata walking past their classroom and tries to notify the girls, but Inomata glares at them. Ebizawa asks Ryu why he is still wearing his apron. Ryu panics, realizing he forgot to take it off. Hayato calls him absent-minded and points out that his butt is covered with stickers. Ryu blushes and asks why he didn't tell him earlier, wondering how far he walked with the stickers on. Kawada and Yamane fawn over Ryu's cuteness and Hayato's attractiveness. Usokawa sticks a sticker on his forehead, lamenting girls' ranking systems, while Ebizawa says they are based on looks. At the daycare center, the children stick stickers onto a sleeping Usaida. Kirin admires her boar sticker. Inomata angrily walks away, remembering what the girls said about her. She regrets yelling at them since they were right. She pictures Ryu and blames him for her flustered feelings. She recalls his Valentine's Day compliment and turns red, convincing herself it doesn't matter what he thinks. Suddenly, Kirin tells Inomata her face is red. Inomata instinctively denies it. Seeing Kirin and Kotaro, Kirin begins to cry after being yelled at. Inomata asks why they are there, and Kirin insists her face is red. Inomata denies it again while Kirin sobs. Inomata plans to take the children back to the daycare center, but Kirin denies being lost, saying they left a note with Usaida. At the daycare center, Usaida looks at Kirin's incomprehensible note while Taka searches for Kotaro. Kirin explains they came to play with Inomata. Inomata kneels and tells them to return. Kirin tears up, asking if Inomata hates them for not playing with them. Inomata denies it, blurting a certain boy is the reason. Kirin asks if she means Usaida or Hayato, then wonders if Inomata hates Ryu, which stuns Kotaro. Inomata denies this, so Kirin asks if she likes Ryu, which she denies. Kirin cheers up Kotaro and shares her plan to show Inomata Ryu's good traits. She holds Kotaro's hand and runs, asking Inomata to follow. Inomata awkwardly squats outside Ryu's classroom as Kirin tells Kotaro to show Ryu's best points. Kotaro opens the door, attracting attention. Ryu walks up and Kotaro hugs him. The female classmates are touched. Ryu asks Kotaro why he is there. Kirin shows Inomata that Ryu is caring. Inomata admits he is kind but overindulgent. Kirin claims Inomata must like strict people and runs into the room, telling Ryu that if he doesn't hit her, she will be bad. Ryu is confused, but Hayato hits her and tells them to return to the daycare. Kirin sobs, jumping into Ryu's arms. Ryu comforts Kirin, telling Hayato to hear her out before hitting her. Hayato argues he did, which is why he hit her. Kirin tells Ryu he has to be the one to hit her so Inomata can make up with him. Inomata slams the door open, insisting she's seen enough and it's a misunderstanding. She says she doesn't hate Ryu, but blushes and yells she doesn't like him either, then stomps away. Ryu calls after her, grabs her wrist, stunning her and their classmates watching eagerly. Ryu smiles and tells Inomata there's a sticker on her skirt. She finds a boar sticker. Ryu explains they also stuck stickers on him, and he felt embarrassed. Kirin proudly tells Hayato she put the sticker on Inomata. Ryu's classmates wonder if Ryu is an airhead. Inomata walks away, remembering Kirin's question about liking Ryu. She tells herself she definitely hates him, but her hands and face are red. At the daycare center, Kirin tells Ryo she knows what's good about him, so he shouldn't be sad. Ryu thanks her. Usaida asks Kirin what is good about him. Kirin replies, Usaida is a bad person. The other children agree, calling him bad while Ryu laughs awkwardly. In the morning, Kotaro helps Ryu sweep. Kusuke arrives with Takuma, wearing sunglasses and a jacket, and greets them. A cheery Takuma takes Kusuke's glasses, as Ryu asks why he is here alone. Takuma explains that Kazuma has a cold. At home, Kazuma lies in bed, tearfully calling for Takuma while Umi comforts him. She tells him to rest and gives him sweet medicine to get better. Kazuma, scared, quickly sips it down. Umi applauds him while Kazuma cries for Takuma. Ryu figures Takuma and Kazuma must feel lonely. Kusuke cries at the thought. Takuma cheerily shows Ryu Kotaro trying on Kusuke's sunglasses. Kusuke cries more, thinking Takuma is hiding his loneliness, but Ryu realizes Takuma is acting normally. Usaida bets 100 yen that Takuma is fine. Ryu tells him not to read his thoughts. Takuma reaches for Usaida's money. Usaida asks if he feels lonely without Kazuma. Takuma smiles and says he's alright. Meanwhile, Kazuma flinches in fear in bed. Takuma recalls promising his mother to have fun so Kazuma can get better quickly. Ryu reminds Takuma to swear with his pinky, not his thumb. Kusuke comments on Takuma's bravery. Usaida asks for 100 yen from Kusuke, who gives a 500 yen prepaid card with his advertisement on it. Usaida asks for his autograph to sell it, and Kusuke agrees. Takuma takes out a marker to sign too. Ryu tells Kusuke to quickly go to work. Kusuke advises that Takuma might feel lonely without Kazuma later. Takuma happily draws on Kotaro's face. Kusuke kneels to say goodbye, but Takuma is distracted by Hayato and Taka entering. Takuma grabs Kotaro and runs to Hayato. Kusuke tears up, seeing Takuma prefers Hayato. Ryu panics and calls Takuma to say goodbye to his father. The children wave to Kusuke as he leaves, and Hayato notes he looks like a shady character. Takuma holds Kotaro's hand, angering Taka, who pulls Kotaro to the other side. Ryu, Hayato, and the children watch as Takuma and Taka pull on Kotaro. Ryu tries to calm them, and Hayato hits Taka on the head. Taka throws a tantrum, claiming he is Kotaro's best friend. Ryu explains that Kazuma is home with a cold. After hearing Kazuma has a cold, Taka holds Takuma's hand, resolving to defeat the cold. The children band together to beat Kazuma's cold and attack Usaida. Usaida asks Ryu for help, but Ryu and Hayato leave for class. Usaida drops to the floor as the children call him weak. On the way to class, Ryu wonders if Takuma will be alright despite looking cheerful. Hayato figures Kazuma isn't handling it well, having a cold and missing his brother. Ryu agrees, thinking Kazuma must be crying. Sure enough, Kazuma sniffles, holding his horse toy and calling for Takuma. Ryu reflects on the twins' differing personalities. Takuma is always cheery, while Kazuma is always teary. In class, Ryu zones out, mumbling, "Never want to be apart," causing Ushimaru to blush, wondering who he doesn't want to be apart from. As the children and Usaida nap, Takuma awakens, pulling off Taka's sock. He thinks about Kazuma while holding the sock. His eyes widen as he looks for Kazuma. Takuma gets up and leaves the daycare center. Taka's foot hits Kotaro's head, waking him. Kotaro sees Takuma leaving. Ryu runs to the daycare, worried about Takuma. He trips and sees Kotaro, who hugs him. Ryu asks if Kotaro ran outside alone, and Kotaro points to where Takuma is. At the school gates, two students fawn over Takuma and a cat. Takuma silently watches the cat. He stands up when he sees Ryu, who asks why he is there. Takuma asks if Kazuma is better. Ryu admits he doesn't know but believes he is, as they all worked hard to beat the cold. Takuma nods. Ryu promises to have Usaida call Takuma's mother to check on Kazuma. Takuma holds out his thumb, and Ryu promises, reminding him that promises are made with the pinky. Kotaro looks at the gates, and Umi tells Ryu she received a call. Ryu sees Umi holding a teary Kazuma. Umi says Kazuma's fever is down, so they came to pick up Takuma. Kazuma cries for Takuma, who stares at him, then sobs. Kazuma also tears up as Umi comforts Takuma. Umi apologizes to Takuma as he sobs into her shirt, telling him he was brave, and Kazuma is better because he kept his promise. Usaida comes out with the children, noting all the crying. Ryu asks if Usaida called Umi, and Usaida says Takuma had been patient. He notes that this scene is the opposite. Takuma is crying and Kazuma is laughing. They all wave goodbye to the twins, who hold hands. Ryu thinks they are better off together. Later, Kusuke bursts in to pick up Takuma, but Usaida tells him Takuma has already gone home, appalling Kusuke. Ryu opens his shoe locker and finds a pink envelope with his name. Usukawa demands to know if it's a love letter, complaining that it's unfair Ryu got one. He asks who the sender is, as he's never seen a love letter in a shoe locker before. Kawata and Ushimaru watch. Kawata asks if Ushimaru wrote the letter, but she denies it. Ushimaru wonders if Inomata wrote it. Hayato takes the envelope, noting there's no name, and suggests it's a prank. He waves the letter around, questioning why a girl would use such an old-fashioned way to confess. Ryu blushes, snatching the letter and saying he'll check it himself. Ryu can't believe it's a love letter, claiming girls don't like him. Hayato and Usukawa wonder how many girls he's ignored to think that. Ryu opens the letter, but Inomata interrupts, saying dawdling in front of the lockers is a nuisance. Ryu hides the letter and assures her they'll leave soon. Usukawa grabs the letter and starts reading it. As Usukawa reads the letter, Ryu and Inomata freeze. The sender admits her crush on Ryu and asks to meet behind the school building tomorrow morning. Usukawa smiles at the girl's name and class, stunning Inomata and Ushimaru. Usukawa exclaims it's really a love letter and thinks he's jealous, but this means he can have Ushimaru. He asks Ryu what he'll do, but Ryu's face is completely red. Hayato asks why Usakawa is blushing too. Ryu stutters, explaining this has never happened to him. Ryu takes the letter, puts it back in the envelope, and quickly walks towards the exit. Hayato reminds him he's still wearing his indoor shoes. Usakawa and Hayato watch Ryu stumble. Hayato asks why Ryu is so flustered by a girl's confession, angering Usakawa. Kawada notices Ushimaru and Inomata are aghast. She puts her hands on their shoulders, offering to let them vent. She invites Inomata to join them on the way home. At the daycare center, Usaida notices Ryu's red cheeks, asking if he has a cold. Ryu stutters, lying that he ran to the daycare after school. Kotaro puts a blanket on Ryu's lap. Ryu pats his head, assuring him he doesn't have a cold. Ryu tells himself to calm down, but Kotaro notices his nervous look. Ryu's mind is clouded by the confession. He holds the picture book upside down, drops baby powder, and forgets to change his shoes again. He feels happy someone likes him and wonders if he's interested in romance. At dinner, Saikawa congratulates Ryu with red rice. The chairwoman asks why, and Saikawa explains Ryu got his first love letter. Ryu panics and denies it, confusing her. Ryu tries to change the subject, saying the rice looks delicious. The next morning, Ryu thinks about the confession, deciding to politely decline as he can't manage dating and taking care of Kotaro. Kotaro lets go of Ryu's hand and runs towards an lemon tree. Inomata angrily tells herself she left early to study, blushing as she denies interest in the confession. Ushimaru admits she has no reason to be early. They bump into each other at the school gates. Ryu suddenly grabs Inomata's arm. Panting, Ryu asks if they've seen Kotaro. He explains he lost track of him. Inomata says she hasn't seen him, so Ryu runs to find him. Inomata tells him to stop blaming himself and offers to help. Ushimaru also offers to help since she knows the area well. As they search, Ryu panics. Hayato calls his name, and Ryu sees him with Taka on his shoulder and Kotaro holding a lemon. Hayato explains Kotaro wandered into a yard to pick an orange. Kotaro mentions the chairwoman's medicine. Ryu remembers Kotaro squeezing lemon juice for him when he was sick, and realizes Kotaro misunderstood his blushing as signs of a cold. Ryu kneels, holds Kotaro's hands, and tearfully tells him not to leave him behind for a fruit. Later, Ryu apologizes to the girl who wrote him the letter. She walks away disappointed. Hayato asks why he rejected her. Ryu says Kotaro is his priority. Hayato tells Ryu his priority is not healthy. Ryu flusters and tells him to leave him alone. Ushimaru, hiding nearby, asks Inomata if this means that they've been turned down too. Inomata insists she's not interested in Ryu and is relieved he acted like himself. Ushimaru asks to call her Maria-chan and hopes to be friends. Inomata blushes and tells her not to use her first name. Inomata arrives at Class C. Ryu greets her, but she says she's there to deliver printouts, not to see him. Ushimaru asks if she's there for her. Inomata blushes, denies it, and Ushimaru calls her Maria-chan again. Inomata tells her not to use her first name. Ryu smiles, seeing Inomata making friends. Saikawa picks up the phone and hears heavy breathing. Then a loud smack. Hayato hits Taka, scolding him to stop stalling and give his name. Taka tears up, complaining that it wasn't Ryu who answered. Hayato tells Taka not to get shy if he insisted on making the call. Taka asks him to ask for Ryu and Kotaro, so Hayato takes the phone. Saikawa jokes about his underwear color, and Hayato says he never asked. Taka excitedly holds the phone, shaking nervously. Hayato tells him to hurry up and speak. Ryu asks Kotaro, holding the phone oddly where he is trying to listen from. Taka quickly invites Kotaro to the summer festival. Hayato and Taka hear a loud bump. Hayato asks if everything is all right. Ryu explains Kotaro hit his head on the phone when he nodded. Ryu asks the chairwoman for permission to attend the festival. She agrees, but warns him not to waste money, as vendors often swindle customers. Saikawa presents yutakas for Ryu and Kotaro, and offers to help them dress. At the festival, Taka in a yutaka waves his toy sword as he and Hayato wait for Ryu and Kotaro. Hayato tells him to stop swinging it as he'll get in the way, asking why he brought it and warning he might lose it. Taka insists he won't lose his sword, but Hayato doubts it. Ryu calls out to Hayato and apologizes for any wait. Hayato dismisses it, but asks why Ryu put so much effort into his outfit. Ryu explains that Saikawa and the chairwoman put thought into the outfits, so it would be rude to turn them down. Hayato asks if Saikawa is the one with black underwear, confusing Ryu. Taka grabs Kotaro's hand and runs toward the stalls. Ryu calls after them, warning they might get lost. Hayato glares, wondering if he should hit Taka before he causes more trouble. Ryu tells Hayato they must keep an eye on the two. Kotaro excitedly looks at his cotton candy, while Taka eats his immediately. Kotaro insists on saving his despite Ryu's warning it will shrivel. Taka looks at a booth featuring toys, including a hero's transformation belt toy in a lottery game. The attendant asks if Taka and Kotaro want to try, and Taka tells his brother he wants the belt. Ryu and Hayato quickly sweep the boys away from the booth. Hayato suggests they get something substantial to eat, and Ryu agrees, despite Taka's dismay. They know the strings aren't connected to the toys. Taka balls and waves his cotton candy stick around. Usaida greets Ryu and Hayato from a goldfish booth. Usaida compliments their yutakas and asks what happened to Taka. Taka tells him he wants the belt. Usaida hands Taka and Kotaro goldfish scoopers, telling them to cheer up. Ryu asks if they can have the fish, but Usaida says they still have to pay. Hayato sets down Taka and asks why he is charging them. Usaida offers a discount, causing Hayato to call it a hard sell. Taka stamps his foot and cries, demanding to pull the string instead of scoop goldfish. Hayato warns him to shut up or he'll leave him with Usaida. Hayato then asks Taka where his toy sword is. Taka looks at his hands and sees only a cotton candy stick. Hayato bluntly tells him he lost it. Taka looks shocked, then screeches and cries, attracting the attention of festival goers. He drops to his knees, bawling, causing Hayato to hit him and order him to get a grip. Later, Ryu comforts Taka, assuring him they can find his sword by retracing their steps. Hayato suggests Ryu and Kotaro enjoy the festival while he helps Taka. Hayato says Ryu has not obligated to look after Taka outside school, and adds that Taka is a pain to be around. Ryu tells Hayato he wants to help because they are friends. Hayato stays silent, making Ryu think he doesn't see him the same way. Hayato says if Taka weren't his brother, he wouldn't spend time with him. Taka cries. Usokawa, Ebizawa, and Saginuma greet Ryu. Ryu informs them they are looking for something, and Usokawa asks if they are looking for hot girls. Ryu sighs after they search the cotton candy stand. Taka cries for his sword, but the cotton candy maker tells them there is a lost and found at the festival office. So they quickly rush to that booth. At the lost and found, Ryu greets Yagi and asks why there are so many girls around. Hayato jokes if this is a host club. Yagi explains he lives nearby and decided to help. Ryu tells Yagi that Taka lost his sword. Yagi looks at teary-eyed Taka, says it's awful, and his nose starts to bleed. Ryu asks if he's alright, but Tsukichi tells him not to worry. Tsukichi explains he's in charge of the lost and found. He instructs Tsukichi and Kichi to bring all the toy swords. Taka looks at the swords and realizes his sword is not there. Hayato offers to take Taka to the lottery booth if he gives up, blushing slightly. He reminds Taka to thank Ryu for helping him search. The booth attendant watches Taka glare at the strings, unsure which to pull. Hayato tells him to pick one. Kotaro pulls a string, surprising Taka. Kotaro's string reveals Taka's sword, stunning everyone. Hayato grabs the attendant's collar, suggesting a talk. The attendant swears he didn't just find it and apologizes by giving Ryu and Kotaro a piggy bank shaped like a game system. Kirin and Kazuma sob in fear, while Kotaro stares at his feet in shock. Midori plays with the sand and Takuma chases Taka through the water. Ryu watches the children as Usaida arrives with snacks. Ryu notes the children are split into beach-loving and beach-hating factions. Usaida declares he loves the beach and plans to look at swimsuit hotties, eat snacks, and sleep. Usaida asks about Hayato. Ryu points to the ocean, where they see Hayato rapidly swimming far from the beach. Yayoi appears, stunning Ryu. She tells him he can go for a swim. Umi, holding her twin's hands, says the mothers will look after the children today. Yukari thanks Ryu for his work at the babysitting club. Taka cries to play with Ryu, but Shizuka holds him back, saying he should be with his mother today. Shizuka asks where Inomata is. Ryu sees her arriving, apologizing for being late, wearing her school swimsuit. Everyone goes blank at the sight. Usaida calls her naughty for wearing her school swimsuit, and Shizuka hits him with a towel. Ryu points out he's also wearing his middle school swimsuit. Inomata argues she can still swim in it, so it's not a problem. Yukari takes Inomata's hands, telling her girls need to look pretty. Shizuka says they will help pick one for her, and Yukari adds they'll buy her a swimsuit as thanks for her sweets for the children. Inomata tries to decline, but the mothers hurry her away towards the shops, telling Usaida to watch the children. Usaida comments one cannot say no to a housewife. Usaida tells Ryu to swim since he'll watch the children. Ryu refuses, citing Kotaro's fear of the ocean. Usaida asks if it's Kotaro's first beach visit, and Ryu affirms. Usaida wonders what's scary about the beach, so he holds Kazuma above the water. Kazuma cries and flails. Ryu steps into the water with a nervous Kotaro, thinking it's the feeling of being swept away that's scary. Ryu wades in, trying to show Kotaro the ocean isn't scary. A huge wave crashes over Ryu. Ryu ends up underwater but holds Kotaro above. On the beach, Ryu coughs and tries to tell Kotaro the ocean isn't scary, but Usaida says his argument isn't convincing. Taka and Takuma tease Ryu for drowning, and Ryu suggests playing on the sand instead. Takuma and Kazuma build a huge sand mountain, while Taka digs a hole, flinging sand at Usaida. Kotaro builds a sand pile with a shovel. Ryu, glad to see the children enjoying themselves, suggests building a sand mountain and digging a tunnel with Kotaro. Waves crash, flattening the sand creations. Taka cries while Kotaro looks disappointed. disappointed. Shizuka returns with cups, asking about the fuss. Umi also has cups, and they see the kids playing in the sand. Shizuka tells Taka to dig another hole and hands out juice as a treat. Umi gives Ryu a juice cup. Ryu kneels to Kotaro, and Hayato appears with seaweed on his head, startling them. Hayato offers Kotaro the seaweed for forgiveness. Shizuka smacks Hayato, asking what Kotaro would do with seaweed. Ryu gives Kotaro his juice. Hayato complains he's hungry, and Shizuka tells him to get some onigiri. Shizuka mentions Inomata has changed. Yayoi and Yukari eagerly await Hayato and Ryu's reactions, as they see Inomata in a flower-patterned bikini with a side ponytail. Hayato says it's a swimsuit, causing Shizuka to sigh. Ryu comments that it is cute, referring to the pattern, which matches Kirin's tube. The mothers are shocked by their reaction. Shizuka feels displeased with her son's heartlessness. Yukari suggests they might be embarrassed, but Umi notes they aren't flustered. Yayoi is happy Inomata likes her new swimsuit. Inomata and Kirin smile, noting they match. Ryu suggests making a big sand mountain, but Kotaro is sitting in gravel. Waves crash around Ryu's ankles. He notes Kotaro's nervousness and cuteness. Ryu takes Kotaro to collect seashells. Ryu hovers over Kotaro, protecting him from the heat. He wishes to enter the water as Kotaro finds a nice seashell. The children and Usaida sleep under umbrellas. Umi tells Ryu he can play in the water. Ryu bows, asking them to take care of Kotaro, and Hayato urges him to hurry. Ryu and Hayato enter the water, and Ryu feels relieved by the coolness. Hayato says he thought Ryu avoided the ocean because he couldn't swim. Ryu says he just felt bad about leaving Kotaro alone. Ryu recalls Kotaro's first beach visit as a baby, when he wasn't scared at all. He wonders if Kotaro is scared now because he doesn't feel reassured by Ryu. Hayato smacks Ryu, causing him to drop underwater. Ryu resurfaces, gasping, and asks if Hayato always hits Taka that hard. Hayato explains that Kotaro wasn't scared back then because he was a baby who didn't know better. Ryu admits Kotaro couldn't even stand then. Yukari notices Kotaro waking from his nap. She tells him Ryu is in the ocean, but he probably can't see him from that distance. Kotaro stands up and runs toward the water, stopping at the crashing waves. Kotaro watches Ryu and Hayato. Seeing Ryu go underwater, he freezes, recalling when Ryu held him above water. Despite his fear, Kotaro steps into the water. Yukari walks up to him as he suddenly leaps in. He falls, unable to swim, and Yukari quickly pulls him out, assuring him that Ryu will be back soon. Kotaro coughs and cries, reaching out for Ryu. Ryu resurfaces, hears Kotaro's cries, and asks Hayato if Kotaro was calling for him. Hayato confirms it. Ryu quickly swims back to shore. Hayato comments on his speed and notes that he thought Kotaro was the clingy one, but it might be the other way around. Ryu takes Kotaro from Yukari and asks why he is crying. Yukari explains Kotaro panicked when he saw Ryu underwater and walked into the ocean despite his fear. Kotaro clings to Ryu, who apologizes for causing a fuss. Yukari says it's nice they are so close. Ryu hands Kotaro a shell, remembering their father said you can hear the ocean by holding it to your ear. To his surprise, Kotaro does so. Ryu laughs and corrects Kotaro's grip on the shell, hoping he will love the ocean next time they visit. Morinomiya Academy is on summer vacation, but Ryu and Kotaro reopen the daycare center, cleaning the floor as they wait for others. Taka, holding his mother's hand, looks down, puffy-eyed and sniffling. Ryu asks if he fought with Hayato again. Taka runs to Ryu, trying to explain, but his sniffling makes it hard to understand. Taka cries in Ryu's lap. Shizuka hands him a scribbled baseball. Kotaro points and says, "Poo." Shizuka confirms Taka scribbled poo-like shapes on Hayato's treasured autographed baseball. Ryu assumes Hayato hit Taka hard, but Shizuka smiles, saying that would be usual. Hayato stares at his ruined baseball as Taka teases him. Hayato walks past Taka without a word, asks his mother for lunch, and heads to school, ignoring Taka. Hayato gets dressed and leaves. Taka runs after him, saying he wants to go too, but Hayato shuts the door, leaving Taka crying. Ryu realizes Hayato is ignoring Taka. Ryu says Hayato must be very angry. Shizuka asks Ryu to check on Hayato, saying an apology won't help if Hayato continues to ignore him. Taka refuses to apologize. Ryu asks who will watch the children since Shizuka has classes and Usaida is not here. The chairwoman and Saikawa enter, saying they will look after the children and ordering them to get moving. Kotaro calls the chairwoman Shaggy as Ryu and Shizuka leave. At the baseball club's practice, a member warns Ryu against speaking to Hayato, who is angrily swinging his bat. The member mentions Hayato's talent and pities him for having to take care of his brother. He apologizes to Ryu, realizing he also looks after his brother. Ryu dismisses it, saying he enjoys it. He decides to talk to Hayato, who glares at him. Ryu nervously asks if they can talk. By the water fountains, Ryu explains Taka's situation, sympathizing with Hayato's anger. Hayato asks if Kotaro does similar things, and Ryu recalls moments when Kotaro upset him. Ryu remembers Kotaro knocking over his matchstick model, scribbling on his homework and dropping his phone with important emails into the toilet. Hayato pats his shoulder, telling him to cheer up. Ryu decides to get over it since they were accidents. Hayato explains his situation is different, as Taka had malintent and refuses to apologize. He sighs, saying he should probably just suck it up. The chairwoman listens to Taka explain what happened. Taka sniffles, blaming Hayato for not playing with him. Saikawa is impressed she can decipher Taka's incoherent speech. The chairwoman asks if Taka has anything he treasures, and he eagerly gets his toy sword. She takes it and asks Saikawa for a hammer to destroy it. The chairwoman is about to destroy the sword but stops when Taka begs her not to. She tells him this is essentially what he did to Hayato. She hands the sword back, asking if he still thinks he did nothing wrong. After school, Ryu asks Taka if he wants to apologize to Hayato. To his surprise, Taka quietly nods. Ryu brings Kotaro and Taka to the baseball club's practice area. Hayato, walking with his teammates, stops when he sees them. Taka hides behind Ryu's leg. Hayato turns and walks away. Taka sprints after him, slips, and falls. Hayato calls Taka an idiot and tells him to hurry up or be left behind. Taka gets up, runs to his brother, and apologizes, admitting he was wrong. Hayato lightly hits his head, telling him to shut up, then apologizes for not spending time with him. Ryu watches and reflects on their conversation. He thinks about how kids grow up, realizing that someday Kotaro will stop playing pranks. Hayato suggests they all play baseball tomorrow. Ryu wonders if the kids can handle it, but Taka excitedly agrees to play. Usaida questions the flyer for the babysitting club's refreshment stand, doubting anyone will come after reading the disclaimer about children spilling juice. Ryu insists it's true. They watch the kids spill juice, with Kotaro tumbling in his lettuce costume and Midori laughing in her onion outfit. Taka bumps into Kazuma, leading to more spills. Ryu notes only Kirin can carry juice properly. He praises Usaida's costume sewing skills as Usaida offers him a corn costume. Usaida mentions making a green pepper costume for Inomata, who is busy with her own exhibit. Ryu wears the corn costume without hesitation, which Usaida loves about him. Usaida mentions the children's fathers are coming today, and that he's only met Kusuke. Yayoi suddenly appears, causing Ryu to fall. Taka and Kotaro try to help, rolling around with Ryu as Usaida videotapes the scene. Hayato finds Ryu in the corn costume and helps him up. Kirin tears up, asking if her mother will watch her carry juice. Yayoi assures her that her father will be there to watch. Yayoi asks the boys for a favor regarding her husband, thinking it will be easy. Meanwhile, her husband offers flowers to two girls and asks them to show him to the daycare center, which they happily do. Inui is advertising a candy sale when a bearded man asks for directions to the daycare center. Inui agrees. Meanwhile, Kusuke hides from female students, thinking his sons aren't waiting for him. In the daycare, Takuma and Kazuma excitedly call for Hayato. Kirin's father arrives, takes pictures of Kirin in her carrot costume, and offers flowers to Yayoi. She stops him from kissing her and tells him to greet the babysitters. He looks for the female babysitters Yayoi mentioned, but finds Ryu and Hayato in wigs and Usaida with his hair tied up. Usaida, using a falsetto voice, introduces them as Ryuko-chan and Kamitani Hayako-chan. Kirin's father angrily realizes Usaida is a guy. Usaida sarcastically calls him dad and questions Yayoi's claim of female babysitters. He notices most children are boys. He finds Takuma and Kazuma cute, but realizes they're boys. Midori bites his leg and Kirin clarifies that Midori isn't a boy. He picks up Midori, apologizes, and compliments her eyes, joking he'd marry her if he were younger. He then asks the boys their intentions towards Kirin. Takuma, Kazuma, and Kotaro say they like her, and Kirin's father calls them beasts. Taka says he doesn't like Kirin, and they argue. Disgusted by the boys, Kirin's father decides to leave with Midori and Kirin. Ryu asks him to wait, assuring him they are just good friends and that Usaida is reliable. He asks for trust. Kirin's father takes Ryu's hand, not realizing he's a boy, and says he'd propose if he were younger. Midori pulls off Ryu's wig, revealing he's a boy. Ryu asks Hayato to say something. Hayato, in a purple wig, tells Kirin's father he can leave alone. Kirin's father calls Hayato a cold beauty and says he'd propose if younger. Hayato calls him nuts, and Usaida wonders why only he was recognized. Hayato throws his wig, complaining it's stuffy. Kirin's father panics seeing Hayato is also a boy. Kirin asks if he doesn't want to see her perform, and he hugs her and Midori, saying he wanted to see her and meet cute babysitters. Usaida calls him dad again and says he might have revealed too much. He yells back, calling Usaida a jerk, then feels a hand on his shoulder and sees the bearded man Inui let in. The bearded man demands why he is holding Midori. Kirin's father introduces himself as Kumatsuka Satoru. The bearded man introduces himself as Sawatara Yutaka, Midori's father, saying their daughters get along well. Inui asks Ryu if Yutaka, the mountain man, is Yukari's husband. Usaida puts the wig back on Ryu, and Inui, seeing the wig, mistakes Ryu for a girl. Yukari and the other parents arrive. Yukari calls out to her husband while Umi and Shizuka tell Kusuke to stop crying and get it together. Yukari asks Inui if he's here for the refreshment stand, but Inui says he was just showing her husband the way. Yutaka thanks him, and Inui runs out. Outside, Inui rubs his eyes in embarrassment. He recalls the girl, Ryu in a wig, and thinks she was quite cute. At the daycare, children bring juice to adults. Kirin shows her father she can carry juice without spilling. Satoru takes the cup, fawns over her, and sighs as she returns to the children. He recalls she was a baby and imagines her grown up in a wedding dress. Ryu tries to console him, noting it's early to think about marriage, but Yutaka and Kusuke also tear up. Usaida says some girls don't marry, but Satoru insists his daughter will. Kirin announces it's Kotaro's turn, and Satoru demands who Kotaro-chan is. Kotaro wobbles to the table, spilling juice. Ryu waits patiently, admitting Satoru is right that time flies. Saikawa kneels behind Ryu, applauding Kotaro, which stuns Ryu. Ryu falls back, wondering why people keep surprising him. Saikawa informs that the chairwoman has a visitor and can't attend, to Kotaro's dismay. Saikawa adds he saw regret in her eyes. Satoru suggests taking a picture to commemorate the event and tells Kotaro to show it to the chairwoman. He offers to take the picture for free since they're helping Kirin. Ryu thanks him, but Satoru reminds everyone he still doesn't trust them because they're men. Taka holds an empty cup to Shizuka while Umi and Yukari play with their children. Satoru warns Ryu he won't allow Kirin to engage in any illicit activities with men, and Yutaka agrees for Midori too. Satoru sets up the camera, instructing everyone to look his way. Shizuka walks to the daycare center where Taka is crying in Ryu's arms after being hit by Hayato. Ryu consoles Taka and scolds Hayato for always hitting him. Hayato raises his fist, threatening anyone who disobeys, scaring the other children. Shizuka hits Hayato with her binder, ordering him not to treat other children this way. She greets Ryu while hitting a sleeping Usaida. She apologizes for her sons causing trouble, comments that Ryu is a good boy, unlike her son, and wonders where Hayato got his hitting habit. Usaida and Ryu think he got it from Shizuka. Hayato asks Shizuka why she's at the daycare since he's picking up Taka. She asks the children if they'd like to see bird eggs in the science lab. The children's eyes sparkle as they hear about the eggs. Despite her saying it's hard to catch the exact hatching moment, the children run to the door. Shizuka tells them to wait and says the eggs hatch tomorrow. Hayato apologizes to Ryu for his mother getting the children excited. Ryu is excited about seeing the eggs hatch. Usaida comments it's the first time he's seen Ryu so excited. Ryu eagerly says he wants to see chicks follow him due to imprinting. Hayato asks why he needs chicks when the children already follow him. Surrounded by the children, Ryu admits he's right. The children excitedly ask to see the eggs. At the lab, the children are disappointed by the eggs in the incubator, calling it a refrigerator and accusing Ryu of lying. Ryu explains the eggs hatch tomorrow, but they taunt him, calling him a liar. Ryu asks Shizuka what to do, but she says she has to read her students' reports. Hayato raises his fist, ordering the children to listen, scaring them. He defends himself, saying he didn't actually hit them. Usaida notes that Hayato rules with fear. Ryu explains that an incubator keeps eggs warm until they hatch, so they can see the chicks tomorrow. Usaida notes that staring at eggs can be boring, but Kotaro seems excited, pressing his face against the incubator. Usaida suggests returning, seeing the children dismantling an anatomical model. That evening, Saikawa, Ryu, and Kotaro make dinner. Saikawa mentions that watching eggs in an incubator sounds interesting. Ryu remembers Kotaro's excitement. Kotaro sees Saikawa about to crack an egg, making him pause. During dinner, the chairwoman sees many potato dishes and asks why Saikawa didn't tell the children that they would be having omelets. Saikawa bows and apologizes. The next morning, Kotaro leads Ryu to the science lab. Kotaro points to the science room, wanting to see the chicks. Shizuka greets them from the window, saying passionate students are always welcome. Ryu and Kotaro excitedly watch chicks crack from eggs. Shizuka smiles, calling them cute, unlike her sleeping sons. Ryu notices the chicks stop moving, and Shizuka explains they are taking a break. After an hour, Shizuka sleeps while Ryu nods off, but Kotaro stays pressed against the incubator. Kotaro sees a chick struggling to hatch and concentrates intensely, even steaming with effort. Ryu wakes up, holding back laughter as he watches Kotaro. The chick hatches, and Kotaro looks excitedly at Ryu. Shizuka explains it is resting, and they can see it later. Ryu checks the clock and urges Kotaro to return to class. Kotaro buries his face in Ryu's pant leg, emotional over the chick hatching. Ryu smiles, recalling feeling the same way when Kotaro was born, but realizes he was much happier then. Later, the chicks follow Kotaro. Usaida says they are imprinted on him, thinking he is their mother. Taka, envious, tries to grab a chick, scaring them away. Ryu calms everyone to avoid scaring the chicks. He and Usaida try to catch them, but one chick runs towards a window with a cat perched. Ryu and the children gasp as the cat targets the chick. The cat pounces, but Kotaro shelters the chick. Hayato catches the cat before it reaches the chick, advising them to close the window if the chicks are loose. Ryu pats Kotaro's head, who smiles and picks up the chick. The babysitting club spends time with the chicks, and Ryu silently hopes they grow up strong. On a winter day, Usaida, sick with a cold, calls Ryu to say he can't come to work. Ryu mentions his phone is malfunctioning, and Taka eagerly wants to talk to Usaida. Usaida regrets sleeping naked in winter, stunning Ryu. Shizuka quiets Taka, and Usaida says he can't come in, making Ryu consider missing class. Usaida says he arranged outside help. Saikawa arrives, surprising Ryu. Saikawa says the chairwoman wants Ryu to prioritize his studies. Saikawa vows to do his best, admitting he's not as capable as Ryu or Usaida. He shows a book on infant care he studied. Kotaro grabs Saikawa's pant leg, nodding supportively. Usaida tells Ryu to go to class, assuring Saikawa can ask teachers for help. Ryu tells Kotaro to behave good with Saikawa. Shizuka does the same with Taka. Kirin, Takuma, and Kazuma greet Saikawa, calling him a butler. Ryu informs the children that Saikawa will be with them as Usaida has a cold. Saikawa entertains Midori with a drum. Taka says he doesn't like Usaida. Ryu heads to class, everyone waves goodbye. Ryu worries if he was rude to doubt Saikawa's capabilities. Saikawa sits with Midori and Kotaro, but the other children are nervous without Ryu. Saikawa thinks of ways to make them comfortable. Kotaro nods reassuringly at Saikawa. Saikawa bows to the children and asks for their help, admitting he can't handle it alone. The children are excited to be in charge and show him games, but Saikawa notices Midori grimacing. Usaida, surprised Saikawa agreed to work at the daycare, wonders if the children miss him. He doubts it and goes back to sleep. Saikawa calls, but Usaida says the connection is bad. Saikawa's call breaks up, mentioning an emergency with Midori before disconnecting. Usaida, stunned, tries to call back, but fails. 10 minutes earlier, Midori had a diaper leak. Saikawa holds a crying Midori, noticing she peed on his back. He decides to change her diaper first. Kirin gets the diapers, and Taka gets the wipes. Saikawa thanks them, but tells them not to run. Kirin bumps into Taka, spilling water on the diapers. Saikawa assures them he'll ask Usaida for spares, but Midori slaps his phone into the water. The phone falls into the water, and Kirin and Taka start crying and insulting each other. Takuma and Kazuma join in. Soon, everyone but Saikawa and Kotaro are crying. Kotaro looks worried, and Saikawa understands him. Saikawa lays Midori down, takes off his jacket, and holds a cloth up, promising to devote himself to the children. During gym, Ryu sees someone collapse. Shocked, he kneels to help and realizes it's Usaida. Ryu asks why Usaida is outside. Usaida mentions an emergency with Midori, but can't call Saikawa. At the daycare, they find Midori fine with a cloth diaper. Saikawa explains he improvised due to soaked diapers. Usaida asks to sleep, and the children assure him they are fine. Taka and Kirin tell him to rest. Usaida tears up. Hayato points it out, embarrassing him. Saikawa says they helped him and wishes Usaida a swift recovery. Saikawa adds that Midori missed Usaida most. Midori tugs his pant leg and says, Usaida, making him blush. The next day, Yukari pouts as Midori's first word wasn't mama or papa. Usaida thinks it could be a fluke, but Midori smiles. Ushimaru reaches for a tennis ball outside the daycare, convincing herself she's not peeking on Ryu or going behind Inomata's back. Inside, Ryu plays hide-and-seek with the children. Takuma and Kazuma cling to his back while Kirin, Taka, and Kotaro hide poorly. Ushimaru peeks through the window, impressed by Ryu carrying Takuma and Kazuma. Takuma spots her, making her panic and hide as Ryu looks outside. Ushimaru sighs in relief as Ryu returns. Inomata asks why she's behind the bushes. Ushimaru denies spying, claiming she was fetching a ball, but her hand is empty. Inomata assures Ushimaru she understands, admitting she finds the children cute too. She offers to join her to play with the kids, but says to forget it if she's not interested. Ushimaru calls out, and Inomata apologizes for being blunt. Ushimaru admits she prefers watching from a distance, as she struggles with small children. Ryu slides open the window, and Takuma points out Ushimaru, causing her dismay. Ryu apologizes for disturbing them, explaining he heard voices. Ushimaru feels her romance is over. Inomata, seeing Ushimaru's shock, tells Ryu they want to join him and the children. Inomata grabs Ushimaru's wrist, urging her to get used to the children. Takuma tries to climb the window, but Ryu stops him. Inomata asks if Ushimaru hates children, which she denies, and pulls her inside. Ushimaru looks at the children, unsure what to do. Kirin asks her name, and the children introduce themselves, overwhelming her. Ryu notes they seem comfortable with her, making her blush at the compliment. Kirin jumps onto Ushimaru and touches her chest. The other children ask to touch it too, much to Ushimaru's surprise. Ryu and Inomata quickly restrain the children while Ushimaru shakes with fear. Usaida comments that she is afraid of the sexual harassment type things. Usaida suggests a walk, and the children eagerly run to the door. Inomata feels self-conscious, and Ryu awkwardly awkwardly tries to console her, with Usaida whispering that he's not helping. Outside, the children hold hands with Ryu, Inomata, Usaida, and Ushimaru. Taka complains about Usaida, who ignores him. Ryu asks Ushimaru to hold hands with Kotaro, assuring her that he's the calmest. Ushimaru, holding Kotaro's hand, feels touched by his cuteness. She recalls other children tried to lift her skirt or spitting on her and feels relieved to be with Kotaro. Ushimaru smiles but worries Kotaro might feel rejected being with her instead of Ryu. Suddenly, she notices something dripping from Kotaro's face and panics, thinking he's crying. She wipes his face with a handkerchief but realizes he just has a runny nose. Ushimaru recoils in disgust from the snot. Taka grabs her skirt to wipe Kotaro's nose, but Ryu intervenes with tissues. Inomata, seeing Ushimaru on the floor, asks if Ryu did something to her, which he denies. Ryu denies seeing anything, but Takuma and Kazuma say they saw panties. Kirin gives Ushimaru wiggly insects, causing her to collapse from shock and disgust. Ushimaru imagines fireworks shaped like Ryu and Inomata with the children, doubting she can connect with them like they do. She wakes up in the nurse's office, hearing Ryu ask if she's awake. Blushing, she asks if he carried her, but Ryu explains that Usaida did, mentioning she was surprisingly heavy. Embarrassed, Ushimaru pulls the blanket over her. Ryu asks if she's alright, and she expresses disappointment in herself for being bad with children, wondering if she'll ever get married. Ryu tells her he doesn't like snot or bugs either, and the kids often get sticky and crawl on him. He understands her feelings and denies disliking children. Ryu explains that the little kids have become individuals to him, like Kotaro, Taka, and the others. He loves spending time with them. He smiles, assuring her she will manage someday. Usaida slides open the window, saying the children want to apologize. They offer flowers, and Kirin asks if flowers are scary. Ushimaru remembers Ryu's words about each child being an individual. Ushimaru accepts the flowers, thinking that watching from afar is now boring. She blushes, thanks them, and asks if she can come play again. The children smile. Ushimaru asks about Inomata, and Ryu explains she went ahead and wanted to apologize. She thanks Usaida and Ryu, then rushes to catch up with Inomata. Inomata walks towards the school gates, feeling ashamed. Ushimaru suddenly hugs her from behind, apologizing and thanking her. She tells Inomata she loves her, causing Inomata to blush. Ushimaru realizes her friend gave her the chance to change. Usokawa invites Ryu to see the movie R-15 Splatter, but Ryu hesitates because of Kotaro. Saikawa offers to take care of Kotaro. On the day of the movie, Ryu asks Saikawa if he's sure about taking care of Kotaro. Saikawa reassures him, saying the chairwoman supports Ryu's social outings. Ryu, realizing this is his first outing without Kotaro, instructs Kotaro to be good. Saikawa promises to protect Kotaro with his life. As Ryu leaves, Saikawa waves Kotaro's hand. Ryu feels guilty for going out alone since Saikawa recently handled all the children. At the estate, Kotaro glumly sits while Saikawa asks if he wants a snack. Kotaro shakes his head. Saikawa tries to cheer Kotaro with a cattail plant, and Kotaro immediately lights up. Saikawa waves the plant, encouraging Kotaro to play. Kotaro blushes with excitement, then jumps up and catches it. At the theater, Ryu apologizes for being late. Usokawa mentions they are still waiting for Hayato, who appears with bite marks from Taka. Hayato asks if Kotaro cried. Ryu admits he was too worried to leave. Hayato says Ryu loves his brother too much. Usokawa jokes about telling girls Ryu has a brother complex, but Ebizawa discourages him. Ryu reflects on his worry for Kotaro. During the movie, Ebizawa, Saginuma, and Usokawa are scared, but Hayato is calm. Ryu thinks about Kotaro. At the estate, Saikawa draws Ryu on a ball and tells Kotaro to fetch. Kotaro chases the ball but keeps pushing it away. Saikawa finds Kotaro's efforts cute but warns him not to go too far. Kotaro ends up in a room with an open window where the wind flips pages of a book. Saikawa explains the room is the library used by the chairwoman's late son and daughter-in-law, who loved books like Kotaro. In a flashback, Yuichi and his wife invite Saikawa to listen to a joke collection, hoping to see him laugh. Back in the present, Saikawa apologizes for not laughing at the jokes, and recalls the chairwoman airing out the unused library for her son and daughter-in-law. Kotaro picks a book about love poetry, and Saikawa offers to read it, smiling and thinking of the future. The chairwoman arrives, sees Saikawa reading to Kotaro, and huffs, wondering what nonsense he's reading. In the evening, Ryu runs home to find Saikawa and Kotaro waiting at the door. Kotaro hugs his leg, and Saikawa welcomes him back, explaining they were eager to see him. Ryu gives Saikawa a zombie keychain, which Saikawa happily accepts, thanking Ryu for a wonderful day. Ryu reflects that it's been a year since they arrived. The chairwoman bangs her cane, instructing Saikawa to prepare dinner and Ryu to assist. Ryu tells the chairwoman they haven't done a formal welcome back, saying, "I'm home now." She welcomes him back, making Ryu realize this is his home. Ryu asks Saikawa what they did today. Saikawa mentions playing standard games and shows a cattail. Ryu laughs as Kotaro shows his ball. In December, Kotaro becomes obsessed with Santa decorations, stopping to stare at every Santa sign and picture. A flyer passing Santa nervously notices Kotaro's intense gaze. Ryu struggles to hurry Kotaro along, especially when he stops to stare at a bearded man with a dog. Exhausted, Ryu reaches the daycare and tells Usaida about Kotaro's Santa obsession. Usaida comments on Ryu's lateness, realizing Ryu indulged Kotaro's fascination. Usaida notices Kotaro's casino poster and asks about it. Ryu points out a tiny Santa on the poster, surprising Usaida at Kotaro's keen eye. Taka brags to Kotaro about seeing a cooler Santa at the department store and asking for a hero belt. Usaida notes that Taka fell for the store's tricks. Usaida tells Taka that Santa visits only good kids. Taka protests, but Usaida points out his dislike for broccoli. Taka, willing to eat it, surprises Usaida. Hayato hits Usaida, accusing him of wanting to make Taka cry. Usaida admits this was true. Taka asks Hayato if Santa will come, and Hayato bluntly says no, as their mother bought the presents. Ryu quickly covers his mouth to avoid crushing Taka's dreams. Hayato tries to remind Taka that he was there when they bought the gifts. Kotaro reassures Taka by nodding. Ryu starts thinking about Santa, and Hayato notices his expression. Usaida stares at the casino flyer. On December 18th, Kirin starts to share her Santa wish, but decides to keep it a secret. Satoru swoons over her cuteness, and warns Ryu not to fall for her. The next day, Usaida yawns as the children play. He sees Inomata and Ushimaru peeking in, and they gasp when caught. Takuma announces he asked Santa to keep him and Kazuma together forever, and Kazuma agrees. Kusuke, crying, asks Ryu what to get them for Christmas, lamenting his indecision. Yukari, holding Midori in a bear suit, tells Ryo she finished Yutaka's Santa costume. Ryu imagines Yutaka as Santa, and agrees he fits the role well. Ryu thinks about dressing as Santa while changing for Jim. Usokawa sees Ryu stuffing clothes up his shirt and asks what he's doing. Ryu explains he's trying to look like Santa. Usokawa jokes he thought Ryu was pretending to be pregnant. Ushimaru peeks in, curious, and Kawada scolds her for peeking at boys. Ebizawa asks if Ryu is playing Santa for his brother. Usokawa wonders why, saying it's the father's job. Ebizawa and Saganuma hit him, scolding him for being insensitive. Usokawa apologizes, and Ryu assures them they don't need to walk on eggshells for him. Ryu recalls his parents' serious approach to Christmas and admits he believed in Santa until 3rd grade. He says Kotaro also believes in Santa and is excited to meet him. His classmates are touched by his plan. Usokawa asks how he's such a good brother, and Ebizawa finds it funny Ryu believed in Santa until 3rd grade. Saganuma asks if Ryu has his Santa costume. Ryu says his phone is acting up, so he can't search for cheap costumes. Usokawa suggests asking the chairwoman for a new phone for Christmas. Ryu refuses, saying he should get her something instead, since she took him and Kotaro in. Ryu considers giving shoulder massages to the chairwoman. His friends joke if he's being tortured, but he insists she's nice. Hayato enters, and Ryu asks to go to gym with him. Hayato says he's ditching class and leaves, heading to the chairwoman's office. On Christmas Eve, Ryu and Kotaro admire the Christmas tree. Saikawa presents a feast, but it's too much for just the two of them. Kotaro is ready to eat. Ryu asks about the chairwoman, and Saikawa says she's at an important dinner, disappointing Kotaro. Saikawa apologizes, saying he has work to finish and can't join them. Ryu notices Kotaro is sad, thanks Saikawa for preparing dinner despite his work. Ryu tells Kotaro to thank Saikawa, but Kotaro looks dejected. Ryu assures Saikawa they will be fine. Saikawa says he wishes he could stay but must go, happy to see they'll miss him. He wishes them a Merry Christmas, and leaves. Kotaro grabs Ryu's sleeve, showing more emotion since they arrived. Ryu finds it easier to comfort him and assures Kotaro they can enjoy the food and wait for Santa, making Kotaro excited. Ryu realizes it's hard to change into his Santa costume with just Kotaro around. He plans to change in the bathroom, but Kotaro follows him. Ryu awkwardly asks Kotaro to wait outside, but Kotaro refuses. Ryu wonders how his father changed into his Santa costume unnoticed, guessing it was when they were distracted by cake. The doorbell rings, and Kotaro announces Santa's arrival. Ryu is stunned to see all his friends, the daycare center, and the parents wishing them a Merry Christmas. Yutaka is dressed as Santa. Kotaro beams, and Ryu blushes upon seeing everyone. The chairwoman gives Ryu a small present, scolding him gently. She left her dinner early to join them. Ryu and Kotaro laugh and smile. The gift is a new smartphone, the same model as his old one, thanks to Hayato informing the chairwoman. Ryu reflects on his initial disappointment not seeing his parents, but immense joy seeing his friends. Everyone counts down and takes a commemorative picture, wishing each other a Merry Christmas.